I know that a lot of people don't really speak on that as much, but I know that I can go listen to a whole album and it makes me feel a certain way. I know if I'm dealing with my depression, I know I can get something out of an album, a track, something, and that can take that away. It can take me to a completely different space.
Sure.
And if we really go back into history, we know that not only did we create hip hop, but music has always been our way of speaking without really being allowed to speak. And so much of it ties into it. And as time has gone on over the last 3 years of me doing this podcast, it's kind of made a lot more sense to me as to what I'm doing and why I'm doing this and why it makes sense.
You said you've been doing it for 3 years?
Yes, I started in 2018.
And you're 3.
It took me having her to really realize what I wanted in life.
Yeah, when I get 4, I can get
She is my inspiration for everything, like literally. And I remember right before I got pregnant, that was like my manifestation, like, God, give me a push, give me something. I hadn't found my purpose in anything. I went to school for fashion, hated it. It didn't work out, and I was actually just getting ready to move back to Georgia and just give up and just kind of do what I was content with. And then I gave birth to her, and everything just kind of came together on its own, and I think that's really what happens when you find your purpose. So right now I'm just kind of working on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm working on a segment called Black Lifestyle, where I actually get to interact with entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs here in Minneapolis. We have a huge community of Black entrepreneurs here, and I know my podcast really focuses on the music, and so I kind of wanted something separate to focus on that, but be more visualized. And I'm also working on more visuals for the podcast and just kind of being more consistent. I know the last 2 years I've kind of been here and there, and nobody really knew what, how, and who I was. So this next year will really just be more me being more vulnerable and just me kind of stepping out into, like, this is Marie, this is what I stand for. I just like to focus on the people that I feel like are actually giving something into this. I'm really picky about who I sit next to. I will not allow anybody in my space. I can't tell you how many people contact me on a regular basis for interviews, but I have to feel good about that decision. I am an empath, and so with my energy levels, I need to know who I'm sitting next to, and the conversations that I'm gonna have are genuine. I actually did have a recent interview that I did, and I feel like I didn't get anything out of it. And that was like my first interview that I've ever done where I was just like, this is just good for numbers. And I had to make that decision. And that's a decision that I'm gonna have to start making as I turn Black Bliss Podcast from a hobby to a career. So
yeah,
it sucked, but being around people who do this and put their all into this makes me happy. But it also lets me know that we still have like a long ways to go. Like, music is never gonna stop coming out, but how can we make this more beneficial for us? How can we make it beneficial, like a world that we created? How can we get the most out of that? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. So then, now that we know who you are and what you're working on now, what do you see coming, like, for Minneapolis, or maybe like we can look bigger, like what do you see coming in general, or for Minnesota?
To be honest, I think that with me being in this, I've had to be very realistic and think that I don't think Minneapolis or Minnesota has what it takes to hit that level. It's gone this far and nothing has changed, and I think we just have to be okay with that. And I think the sooner we make peace with that, the sooner things could be. I think that I think that the narrative has been like, when we see people who make it here and then move to other states, and the narrative has been negative, I think that is it's so hindering on us, because that's the goal. The goal is to elevate. The goal is to be better. The goal is to not stay where you've come from. Nobody does that. It's unrealistic. And so I wish that we would push the narrative, like, yes, it's good to get out of here. This is your starting base. This is your home. You know, it's good to expand and grow. And if we can start appreciating that process a little bit more, I think we can see a little pushing it. But we have to get out of the narrative that we have to be here and stay here and create this narrative here. We know we don't have, like, all of our clubs are completely shut down. Like, how can we be successful if the places that our music should be played in are shut down. Like, it's not possible. Hey, do you see what I'm doing right now? Can you go sit down, please? Here.
So then I guess just like, I got 2 more questions, or maybe 3 more.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You're good.
She knows my speed.
I like YouTube too. I like YouTube.
Yeah, we know.
And I like Bobby's.
I'm 26, so obviously I've grown up in all of this, so I feel like I'm smart on both ends. But having a child that I really would rather be book smart than technology smart is definitely hard. And I know that eventually I'm gonna have to conform to that. But I think also we're getting to a point where that's their way of controlling us. So I really want to teach her that you can be smart without relying on this technology. You can still have a means of a life without this technology. Because what happens if we wake up one day and all of this shit is shut down?
Which is possible. It's happened before.
Yeah. I've really been a huge fan of just some of the younger people, like the people that I interviewed, like RZ, people like that, like Andre Mariotti, like people like that who are very humble. They're amazing at their work, but they're very humble and they know what they have to offer. But you can still call them and be like, hey, I need a feature, I need this, I need that. And there's never any issue. You don't have to have issues with them promoting their stuff. You don't have to have issues with them not doing their part on that. And I think that's really what the issue is. At least from the conversations that I've had with artists, that's really what the issue is people don't hold up their end when it comes to collabing, regardless of what sense that's in.
It's almost like it's better to just like work on your team than try to like work with everybody, right?
But I think that's the hard part. Like, I do this 100% by myself. I don't have a team. And that's probably been one of my biggest downfalls throughout this. It has been. I have 4 brothers and sisters, and those are my best friends. You know, 2 of my best friends, they moved out of state. So it's really just me, and I try to keep a tight circle. I get up in the morning, I go work my regular job, I go to school, I take care of her, and I do this. But whether you're an artist, whether you're a creative, this process is not easy, especially being from a place that doesn't give you the access that you deserve when it comes to releasing this type of stuff. Our resources are very limited.
Not necessarily, I will say, but yeah.
in a sense.
Because it's like so fragmented into the suburbs. Like,
but I also think too, one thing that I feel like I have to work on a lot more is just kind of giving back more to the community. I think during the George Floyd stuff, that really showed us that the lack of community was false. That narrative was 100% false. There were so many people who had nothing to give but were out there every single day doing what they had to do. And I got to witness that firsthand from, you know, I was outside at night helping riot and do all of that. But in the morning, me and my daughter and my sister were out there cleaning up and making sure things were cleaned up. And there were so many people who I saw from, you know, the music community doing that. And so I think that the narrative that we don't help each other and that we don't support each other, that narrative is 100% false. It's just like, I think the people who are saying that are the people who are also not giving. And I think that's really what the issue is.
and they have the loudest voice sometimes.
And that's listen, and that's just how it is. You have to give to receive. And I think a lot of people come into this with like, oh, I deserve all of this. Why can't I have this? I deserve this, I deserve that. But what are you giving back to that? Why do you feel like you deserve any support from anybody when you are not you're not helping this community, you know? And I think that's really what happened. That the whole George Floyd situation really changed my view on everything. But I think it changed a view for a lot of people, and I won't say any names, but I think there's been a lot of people who spoke very negatively on this scene. And all of a sudden when that happened, those are the first people on forefront taking advantage of the commotion that happened. And I was really surprised at that, but I wasn't surprised because it was definitely expected. And I won't say any names, but a lot of people who did the community doesn't support us. They don't value us. They don't want us here, but they were also not in the streets when it was time to be in the streets. That's what I was getting at. So, and I think that really showed a lot. And for me, when I saw that was like, okay, it's time. It's your time. Like, you do this you love your community. The people know that. My kid and the community, because like our kids know each other. Like, our kids grow up with each other, you know. And it's just kind of time for me to kind of get started and really just do something, especially with the radio stations and stuff. I thought that I wasn't ready for that pressure, but I think I'm ready. It was a different sense of family and community being out there. Very different. Me and my mom got into a huge conversation because she's like, you're literally out here rioting, doing all this, and your 3-year-old's at home. And I had to have that conversation with her, like, I'm okay as long as I'm fighting for what's right. If I lose my life today, I'm okay with that, as long as that means my daughter, when she's 16, 17, she can go get a job and they don't judge her because of her skin, or they don't judge her because of how her hair is done. If I have to die behind that, then I'm okay with that. And I've made peace with that. And I had to make peace with that, like, and I never in my lifetime had to make peace with that, ever. That was something that I was okay at that moment with making peace with, and having to explain to my mom, like, we're in 2020, we're fighting for the same thing that these people were fighting for in the 60s and in the 50s and in the 40s. That's the biggest problem here. And I never want to get to a point where I have to explain that to my daughter. I never want to have to get to a point where I have to explain to her that the police are bad people. You know, those are the people that we are supposed to call. We're supposed to teach our children. These are the people that you call in an emergency. And when that's taken away, like, who's going to make our kids feel safe? Who's going to do that for us? But then if you look at it from a positive light, we know what it's like to struggle. We already know. When all of the toilet paper and stuff were being taken up, me and my sister were in Walmart cracking up, like, has people never heard of just washing their ass? Like, has nobody just said, I just can take a shower? Like, what is up with the toilet paper being up when you have showers and water and soap?
That's the headline.
Like, you know, so it's
That's
just,
what I'm putting this on YouTube.
so it's really
Wash
just,
your ass.
that's it. But that really speaks to why this virus is spreading. If people don't do something as simple as wash your hands, why does it surprise us that they're not washing their ass, you know? But it's capitalism. That's how our world is built.
Yeah.
Why people come in, they take, and they make it sound right, and then they move on to the next place. And I have no doubt in my mind that the next place is Mars or wherever they've been sending these fucking ships to.
Yeah, you're right. It's in the DNA.
This podcast has taken a huge toll on me this year, and I don't think people know that. I think I'm maybe $8,000, $9,000 in debt because of the podcast. Yeah, it takes a lot to do this. You know, I had to invest in a MacBook, which got stolen. So I have to work now for my HP, which is why my sound has been really crazy lately. Had to, from finding studio space, I think I've gone through like 4 or 5 different studio spaces just this year. The process of having to get all of my own stuff I started when I first started this, I was working with a team, and going into this year, I was just kind of like, I really want more control of this. I need to know what my numbers look like. I really want to learn how to do all of this 100%. So this entire year has really just been me learning how to do all of this on the technological part. You know, how to record this myself, how to edit this myself, how to put this up and pay attention to my numbers. And that's a full-time job, especially with everything that I have going on. My goal though, is to not only incorporate YouTube and stuff, but I really want to start branching out and working with local artists in other places. I've, like, Atlanta, Chicago.
Gotcha, yeah.
I used to live in Georgia, so I know quite a few people there. One of my friends lives in Arizona, one of my friends lives in New York, and so my goal is to really try and utilize that a little bit with all of them and figure out who I can kind of work with. And I've had quite a few people reach out to me. I've had people reach out to me from like Vegas and stuff, like, oh, we like what you're doing. We would love to be on your podcast. And so for me, I don't want this podcast to be Minneapolis based in the next year or so. I want I want to be able to say I started from here and that's the narrative, but I want this to kind of be a lot bigger than that. I think that me limiting myself to only working with Black artists kind of sets the tone for this, and that means I really need to outsource and start working with people in different areas. So yeah, and I think I have the potential to do that, so you just got to get me to start talking.
Will you shout out to Starin at the City and say your name?
Maria from Black Bliss Podcast. Shout out to Starin in the City.